What is something scary that has happened to you that you can't explain rationally?
I dreamed I was being choked and woke up to find my own hands around my throat.
I had my hand fall asleep while it was up over my head. I completely freaked out when I felt an unknown finger touching the side of my head as I woke up. It was, of course, my own finger, which had no sensation at that moment.
I did this once while watching TV. I had my arm behind my head against the wall, and as it fell asleep, it slowly lowered until it started to rub my face. Being Australian, I immediately feared an imminent attack from some gigantic creature on my face. So I proceeded to slap my own hand and face as hard as I could. Luckily, no one was there to see me.
When I was in uni, I lived by myself in a nice little studio unit behind a house in a fairly decent area. I honestly thought nothing of walking places at night. There was a 24-hour McDonald's and a 7-Eleven that I would often walk to between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. since I was a massive night owl. One night, after finishing an essay at about 2 in the morning, I decided I was hungry but didn't really have anything easy to cook, so I chose to walk down to the 7-Eleven and grab a pie or something. However, as soon as I opened my door, I was suddenly overcome by a suffocating feeling of fear. My heart started pounding, I began shaking. The works. Telling myself that this was ridiculous, I still walked out to the street, intending to go, but that was as far as I got. I was terrified for no reason that I could understand, but the fear was intense all the same. I ran back inside and ended up eating dry cereal instead. Later the next day, I heard about a group of drunk guys who had been causing trouble down near the intersection by the 7-Eleven. They had beaten up someone from my uni. Even though I can't explain it, I'm convinced something bad would have happened to me that night if I had ignored that feeling and gone anyway.
This is really the only kind of paranormal stuff I believe in. It seems like somehow humans are able to perceive or sense situations that are relevant to them when it comes to extreme emotions or events. So often, you'll hear about people suddenly feeling intense and seemingly random negative emotions at the same time a loved one dies unexpectedly, or something similar. I'm not really sure what it means, but I feel like things like this are the last thread of hope I have that maybe, just maybe, death isn't as boring or frightening as, well, you're just gone, and that's it. Granted, I still rationally believe that's the case, but situations like this really interest me, since I can't quite understand how we'd be able to sense these kinds of things in others we care about, or in situations that are somehow relevant to us, especially across great distances.
I'm a little late, but whatever. When I was in first grade, I was hanging out at recess with a friend. He was shooting some hoops outside, and I was playing my DS sitting on the pavement. I remember him asking me if he could make a shot from halfway across the court. I told him he could try, but he probably wouldn't make it. All while looking down at my DS. Suddenly, my dad asked me what I meant, and when I looked up, I was sitting on my living room carpet talking to him. And it was dark out. I was sitting in the same position, playing the same game, on the same level, and in the exact same spot in the level. Everything continued normally that night, and I didn't tell anyone at the time, but looking back, it's really unsettling. For the longest time, I thought it was a dream, but thinking about it now, it didn't really feel like one, and I don't usually remember dreams that well. TLDR. Teleported through space and time once.
I once had something kind of similar happen when I was a child. I was probably around 5 years old, getting ready for bed one evening, when I was suddenly overcome by the feeling that if I blinked, it would already be the next morning. I blinked, and it was daylight. The entire night had passed instantly. I had that same feeling and tested it for 3 nights in a row, and then it just went away. It never happened again. I still remember it 30 years later.
I posted this a long time ago, but when I was younger, my mom was dating this guy. Let's call him JB. After a few months, he invited my mom, my brother, and me to go with him and his son, who was about my age, to his lake house for the weekend. It was right on Lake Michigan, but in a more secluded area, which was pretty awesome. When we got there, though, I immediately felt creeped out. It was a smaller 2-story house, maybe 3 if you count the really big attic, with the living room, dining room, and kitchen on the first floor, and 2 bedrooms on the second. His grandfather had helped build the place with his own father, and then lived there for most of his life while working as a tailor in the nearby town. We went up to the attic to get some beach toys, since that's where JB kept them, so he didn't have to haul them back and forth every time he visited. When we went up there, I noticed in the corner, covered in dust and cobwebs, about 8 mannequins, some just upper torsos and some full body. Not too strange, considering a tailor had lived there. JB's son and I slept in the living room on the couch, since there were no more beds. Around midnight, I heard one of the stairs squeak a few times. Thinking it was my mom checking to see if we were asleep, I told his son to be quiet. quickly turned the TV off, and hid under the covers. After a few minutes of silence, I peeked out and saw 3 of the mannequins moving around in the kitchen. Their limbs weren't moving, but they were sliding across the floor. I thought I was dreaming, but I was so terrified that I hid under the covers again, letting out a small yelp. Then I heard dragging sounds getting closer. I peeked out once more and saw one of the mannequins just a few feet from the couch. I hid again and shut my eyes tight, hoping it would go away. The next morning, I tried not to think about it, really hoping it was just a nightmare. But when we went back up to the attic to put away the beach stuff, the mannequins were in different spots, and none of them were covered in cobwebs anymore. Believe me or not, but it happened, and I've been terrified of mannequins ever since.
After reading this, I can't help but imagine a bunch of mannequins making a midnight snack in the kitchen before heading back up to the attic.
When I was 6 years old, I had a cat named Buster. Buster was actually my stepdad's cat. But since I had never had a cat before, I claimed him as my own. Needless to say, Buster didn't enjoy being hugged and coddled all the time by a little kid, so he wasn't too fond of me. He avoided me whenever he could. He was also an outdoor cat, so he would usually spend most of the day outside and then come in at night. One night, Buster didn't come back home. We usually fed him in the evening, so I was worried. Our area was known for having a lot of coyotes, and my parents were being kind of quiet about Buster's disappearance, but I didn't pick up on it. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, Buster jumped onto my bed. He lay down by my head and let me pet him until I fell asleep. Honestly, I was shocked because he had never done that before. The next morning, I happily told my parents that Buster must finally love me because he had slept in my bed during the night. My parents looked at each other and then sat me down at the breakfast table. They told me that while they were outside the night before, they had found Buster's body in the alley behind our house. They thought a coyote might have attacked him, but he had been gone before that night, so he couldn't have been the one sleeping beside me. To this day, I like to think that Buster just wanted to say goodbye and thank me for trying to love him in the only way a child knew how.
I used to work doing maintenance at historic properties. There was a historic house museum I worked at when it wasn't open to the public. It was part of a larger landmark site. There was a visitor center with offices, and then the house was about half a mile up a dirt road in a wooded area. Sometimes I worked with a crew, but there were plenty of times I was there alone. One winter day when it was really cloudy and dark, I was working alone to prepare for replacing some electrical work on the exterior of the house. I went inside and turned off the circuit to the whole property, and I tested it. It was off. I locked the doors and went outside to start working. After about an hour, I got down from my ladder and started walking around the house, and then one of the lights inside the house turned on. I started to freak out but thought maybe someone was playing a prank on me. I called the visitor center on my walkie-talkie and confirmed that the only other person working that day was still there and hadn't left, and that all the keys to the house were present and accounted for. That's when I really panicked and ran the half mile back to the office. I made my coworker come with me to check out what was going on, but when we got back to the house, the light was off again, though the bulb was still warm. All the doors were still locked and the circuit was still off. Still gives me chills to this day. TLDR. A light turned on by itself in an old house while the power was completely off. Literally impossible and super spooky.